What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the English TV Live podcast here on YouTube. I'm going to play the second episode that we recorded for our podcast, and this is a conversation that I had with our pronunciation expert at English TV Live. Her name is Emma, and Emma and I spoke in this episode about a more serious topic. We spoke about bullying. It was very well received. Lots of people had amazing stories to share, and of course, if you have anything that you'd like to share about the episode, about some of the things that we said, feel free to leave a comment below. With that said, enjoy the conversation. Bye-bye. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the English TV Live podcast. I am joined today by our pronunciation expert at English TV Live, Emma. Emma, what's going on?
Hello! Yeah, thank you for having me, Jacob. Hi.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. And why don't we just start with a little bit of an introduction for those people who are listening who don't know who you are. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Emma. I specialize in teaching pronunciation. And as you've already said, but I mean, in my normal everyday teaching, it's what I do as well. I'm from England. I'm from York originally, but now I live in the west, the southwest of England. And a lot of people ask me, does that mean that you have a Yorkshire accent when you're teaching, blah, blah, blah? And I have to say, no, don't worry. When I do my pronunciation videos, I'm not teaching people with a Yorkshire accent. It's fine. It's quite neutral now. I think that happens when you travel and when you teach, you kind of water down your accent quite a lot. I don't know if you found that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been able to notice, like, do you and Lloyd have the same accent?
Definitely not, no.
Definitely not? Like, it sounds the exact same to me, but I'm kind of a stupid Canadian over here, so I don't know. Every English accent sounds the exact same to me.
No, I've heard that it can be quite difficult as well. And I've heard that it can also be difficult for some people in North America and Canada to tell the difference between British and Australian as well, which I find so unusual because to me they sound completely different, obviously. But I guess it's like us Brits thinking that Canadians and North Americans sound the same. People can't tell the difference.
Right. Yeah, I actually admittedly do struggle with that myself. You mentioned that in your lesson today, and I was kind of laughing because I'm okay at it. Usually after a few minutes, I can tell which is an Australian accent and which is a British accent, but it is something that is not obvious to me right away.
Yeah, it takes a bit of training, I think.
So why pronunciation? Like, were you always just interested in that aspect of teaching English, or was that something that developed over time?
Well, there are a number of reasons why I started teaching pronunciation and focusing on pronunciation. I started studying linguistics when I was at university, and I absolutely loved my classes on phonetics and phonology. And we would literally be sitting, like a huge group of us would be sitting in this room with these computers and with a mirror. And we had to replicate all the sounds in the IPA. So that's the International Phonemic Chart. And it was just, it was hilarious because there were sounds in there that, are, for example, in Arabic, that I just couldn't do them. They were really, really hard to do, but it was just fun, exploring all these sounds. And of course, at first you feel really embarrassed because you're like, oh, I can't make these sounds and everyone's listening to me. They must think I'm an idiot. But then you realize that no one can make the sounds. So you're all just laughing together. And I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. And the reason why I started teaching it, so like every other teacher, I started out, teaching everything, like from general English to exams and things like that. And then I found that there was a major problem with a lot of students who came to England, and I would say things like, did you walk to work today? Or do you have a car? And they would look at me like, walk, work, car? What? Like, what are you saying, teacher? So I realized, like, what do you mean? Like, walk, work, car, like, these are such simple words, you know? And as soon as I wrote them on the board, the students would say, walk, work, car. I'm like,
Right.
no, that's not what I said. So I realized that there was a huge problem with pronunciation and listening, like understanding native speakers. So I said to my students, kind of, I don't know, very lazily in a way, like, oh, you know, you should look on YouTube for listening materials and pronunciation for British English, blah, blah, blah. And quite a few of my students came back and said, no, Emma, we can't find anything. Like, we can just find one or two pages, but they focus on like grammar and vocabulary and idioms, and maybe one or two of the videos are pronunciation. And I thought, no, these students, they're not looking hard enough. I will have a look. So I took to the internet and I looked on Instagram, I looked on Facebook and YouTube. Couldn't find a single British. Now, there are American teachers out there that do this, but I couldn't find a single British English teacher that focused just on pronunciation. And I thought, you know what? There really needs to be someone doing a page on this. But at that time, I was doing my master's, so it wasn't a good time to do it. But as soon as I finished, about a month later, less than that, I started my Instagram page, and that's it. That's pretty much the story.
Yeah, and judging by how fast you've grown on Instagram, I think that there was obviously a need, like you saw, for a British pronunciation expert. There's tons of people, too, who come to me and just say, like, I only want to learn British pronunciation just because I love the accent. And I too have to admit that I'm a big fan of the British accent. Actually, do you ever watch the show Peep Show?
Yes, I know this. I recommend it a lot to my most advanced students. It's really good.
That was something that Lloyd and I bonded over when we first started talking. But Peep Show is one of my favorite shows of all time. I was watching it yesterday, actually, and having a good laugh with Mark and Jez.
Yeah, they're really funny, aren't they? They're such disasters.
Yeah, such disasters. But the topic for today's conversation, is overcoming adversity. And so I just kind of want to give a little bit of a backstory here about why we decided to talk about this. So I'm the person responsible for setting up and designing the English TV Live website, which is something that's difficult for me. It's not an area where I'm too knowledgeable. But anyways, I was setting it up and I asked each of our teachers at English TV Live to send me a video in which they answered 5 questions that I asked. And one of the questions was, what is something that you're proud of? And Emma sent me her video. You can see it right now on our website. And her answer for that question was, I think your words were, I'm proud of myself for surviving school. And you talked about how you were bullied a lot in school. And it's something that I wanted to talk about, overcoming adversity in general, because a surprising amount of people have come to me, people who I've helped online have come to me and said in one way or another that they have people in their lives who are making life more difficult for them in one way or another. And this is in the context of learning English. So many people have people in their lives who tease them about their English level or about things that they're not doing properly, grammar mistakes they're making, etc. I was quite surprised by how many people have come to me with this problem. And it's something that I talk about often, surrounding yourself with good people, whatever you're doing in life. I think that's incredibly important. So I thought it would be interesting to just get to hear your perspective about this and to learn a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, definitely. Sure. I mean, I can talk about a bit about when I was in school to being a language learner myself. And I'm sure a lot of the stories I tell, some people listening can relate. And if they've been lucky enough to not experience those things, at least they can prepare for these things. But what would you prefer I start with?
Whatever you would like to start with. I'll leave it up to you.
Okay, I'll start with school because I think it leads on well to why I am the person I am today. We
Awesome.
could say so. Yeah, in school, would you believe it if I told you that I was really, really shy, really quiet in school?
Really? I would be surprised because
Yeah.
you're not shy right now, it seems. I mean, here's the funny thing too. So I was talking about this with Lloyd, like none of us have met in real life before. And I only met you online even, a few months ago. So we're still getting to know each other. And this podcast will be a step forward in that direction too, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. You'll probably know more about me after this podcast than some of my friends know about me.
Yeah,
But
awesome.
yeah. So yeah, thinking about school. I was actually thinking about it this morning because today is one of the days of this month when kids start going back to school again in the UK. And it got me thinking about, oh God, on this day, like 10 years ago. God, I feel old. Like 10 years ago, I used to wake up and think, oh my God, I really don't want to go to school. I really, really don't want to go to school. And I used to get like chest pains. I used to get stomach pains, like any pain in your body. I got it. It was horrible. And it basically started with a supposed friend who they turned against me for whatever reason, and then they turned everyone else against me. So because of that, the friends that I did have, they didn't want to be friends with me because they didn't want to get bullied and so on. So I was literally left with no one. And it's so sad when I tell this story and people are like, oh, Emma, you're so lonely. But really, I had no one. I had no friends. And I think this is why I really value the friends that I have now, because it's like, oh, I never had you like 10 years ago. Where were you when I needed you like 15 years ago or something? And, it was really sad. I just never found my people, let's say. And it wasn't until I was about 16 when I went to sixth form, which is um, not another word for college, but it's basically a place you go to before you go to university in the UK. I
Okay.
don't know how that would be in Canada, but we go typically from the ages of 16 to 18, and then we go to uni when we're 18.
Okay.
So it wasn't until I got to sixth form when I met people who were my kind of people, like a little bit weird, a little bit geeky. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the show The Inbetweeners. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't seen it.
You will love it, I'm sure. If you like Peep Show, I think you'd like Inbetweeners.
Okay. I'm
It's
writing it down.
Yeah, it's really good. It's basically about these schoolboys. They're also in sixth form, and they are not the cool kids. They're not the nerds. They're not the jocks. They're not whatever. They are in the middle. They are in between. They're the in-betweeners. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I always felt like I was an in-betweener because I never fit into any group. And finally, I found another group of in-betweeners, and it was fantastic. And I can still remember, these same bullies, unfortunately, they went to sixth form with me, but it was just incredible. I don't know what it was. One day, this one of the guys started shouting at me in the corridor, like shouting abuse, as you do, casually shouting abuse to people in the corridor. And I don't know, something in my head just clicked. I turned around and I shouted back, and I stood up for myself for the first time in my life. And this was about age 16, the first time. And that guy never said anything to me again. Like, nothing again. Neither did his friends, nothing. So, when I realized that, like, wow, why didn't I do this earlier? Why did I stick up for myself before? I was kind of annoyed with myself, but I mean, it took all those years of bullying to generate that strength, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, it seems too like because you were able to meet your fellow in-betweeners,
Yeah.
that you and like having that support system there, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, also gave you the courage to do that.
Definitely. Yeah. Because I mean, some of these guys, they'd been through the same thing. They'd also been bullied by the same people in school. So it was kind of like, oh, finally, like we outnumber them and we can fight back. You know, it was almost like this. But even though I was on my own in that corridor and just something clicked in my brain, like, Emma, you really need to shut this guy up because he's been horrible. He was just horrible to everyone. I mean, he's just this guy who, I don't know, hated everyone and thought everyone was beneath him. And so he talked to them like crap, basically. And that day, at that time, it was just the wrong day to pick on me, basically. And I shouted back. And since then, I mean, I've continued. I've always fought, I've always fought my own battles when people, I live in Bristol, and Bristol is a very strange city filled with very strange people. And I do get people in the street, like particularly drunk people trying to start fights and things like that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm ready to go. Like, I'm ready to just like get in a fight, like not a physical fight, of course. But, I'm just ready to take people on now. And yeah, I guess that's really come from all those years in school.
And so I'm curious to know, how did this lead to, you mentioned this earlier, how did this lead to you becoming a language teacher and not like a UFC fighter or something?
I know, yeah, I was thinking about it, but well, I think as a teacher, I never wanted to be a teacher, never ever, because some of my bullies, let's call them, were also teachers in school, because they would maybe see kids making a comment towards me, and they would join in sometimes. It was so bad.
Sorry, so you mean some of the other bullies were actually teachers at the time when you were a kid?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Like, you can imagine, like, you would report this stuff to the teachers, and they'd be like, what are you talking about? They're not bullying, it's just banter. Like, no, it's not. That girl just threw something at my head. Is that banter? You know what I mean? Like, they were just so stupid. They were joining on these stupid jokes, and yeah, they were just stupid people. And I became so that did I ever tell you the story of how I became an English teacher?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, good. Okay, so I basically became an English teacher kind of through laziness. I went through. I know it's like the least lazy profession, but I went to Spain to study for a year, and in Spain they do a lot of exams. And they gave me a list of modules, and they said, okay, Emma, you have X number of credits. You need to choose X number of modules for those credits, blah, blah, blah. And then I saw one module, and it was to be a language assistant in a school. And I said, oh, if I take this module, will I have to do exams? And she said, no, you don't have to do exams. Like, okay, put me down for all the credits I can have for this one. So I did like something like 80 credits in that, which is quite a lot. But I was a language assistant in a secondary school, a Catalan secondary school. And I loved the kids that I was teaching. They were so nice. They were teenagers. They were so nice, so friendly. And then I taught two groups. One group was fantastic, the one I just mentioned. Then the other group was a little bit different. And I can still remember this row at the back, and I could see that they were like the bullies. Okay, just the way that they were talking, and they didn't think I could understand Catalan, which was quite funny because they would say things about me in Catalan, nothing horrible. I mean, just things in Catalan about me or other students. And I would reply in English, and they'd be shocked, like, oh, you speak Catalan? Like, yes, so be careful what you say. And one day there was this boy sitting at the front of the class. He's very, very quiet. and I think he had autism or something like this, just by the way he was. And he was very isolated. Like, there were no students sitting next to him. He was just sitting right at the front of the classroom in the middle, just completely on his own. And the kids at the back kept kind of like calling his name and saying things and like asking stupid questions, blah, 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 whatever. And then one day I just looked at this boy and I just saw myself, and I just went up to him and I kind of knelt down in front of the table and I said, like, are you okay? Do you want some help with your work? Is it difficult? And he said, oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. I understand. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But if you need help, blah, 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 just call me. The teacher who was in the classroom shouted me over. She said, Emma, come here. Okay. And I went over to her, said, yeah, what's wrong? She said, don't talk to that boy, leave him alone. I said, why? She said, just leave him alone, don't talk to him. He doesn't need any help, doesn't need anything. I said, but he's on his own. I need to ask him if he needs help. Then no, leave him alone. He's a bit. It's like, what does that mean, a bit,
Right.
And she was basically trying to say he was weird, which really, really annoyed me, to put it in a polite way. I just couldn't understand. And, there was this part where, in another class, I asked for a volunteer to read a little section of a text. His hand shot up. And Emma, please, can I read it? It's like, yeah, sure, you go ahead, read it. And of course, he wasn't perfect, but he did a very, very good job. And the kids at the back were laughing at him. So I stopped him. I said, can you please stop a second? And they laughed more because I think they thought I stopped him because he was rubbish or something. And I said, you guys at the back, I don't know why the hell you are laughing, but his English is better than all of yours put together. So why are you laughing? And they just stopped. That their faces were just like straight, like they were just like so shocked. Like, did the language assistant seriously just say our English is bad? It wasn't bad, but it was just to kind of show them, like, this guy knows English more than those guys, so why are they laughing? And yeah, I just got so annoyed. I was like, I don't know why you're laughing. His English is fantastic. He's reading this text. He sounds almost native. He didn't, but whatever. He sounds almost native. What's the problem? And they were just silent. And for the first time, I was like, yes, I am that teacher who fights against the bullies for the kids, and that's kind of why I got into it more and more. And I loved it after then. And this kid was sitting at the front of the class just beaming, like he was smiling so much, like, oh, thank you, someone's finally stuck up for me, someone's talking to me, what I mean, treating me like a human. And yeah, I just felt so bad for this kid. I was so disappointed in the teacher, and the way that she was, and I was just disappointed in the other students, the bullies at the back of the class, but they didn't say anything to him after that, so I was so happy.
Yeah, that's amazing. But you've transitioned now to teaching adults online, mainly, I think, right? I know that you still teach in person. Is that right?
Yeah, I do.
And are you teaching kids or are you teaching adults?
No, I just teach adults. But, there's so much bullying that goes on with adults as well. You wouldn't believe. It's so sad.
Is that what it seems like? Is that what primarily motivates you, you think, to teach? Is recognizing this stuff and helping people who are, I guess, who are experiencing situations similar to what you experienced when you were a kid?
Yeah, you could say that. I just don't like seeing anyone struggling, and I don't like seeing anyone, I don't want to say in pain, but you know what I mean? Like, I just don't like watching people struggling in a situation, basically. And I see many people struggling with language, and I think, language should be the last thing holding you back. If you're already shy and then you have a language barrier on top of that, it's like you become double shy. And, that makes you kind of vulnerable, unfortunately. In England, I don't want to put people off coming to England and wanting to work here, but unfortunately, people will take advantage of you just because they think you're stupid because your English isn't very good, or they think that you're less intelligent than what you are. I mean, I teach people who are engineers and doctors and lawyers and so on, and their English isn't fantastic yet. And it's so sad because people talk to them like they're idiots, almost like they're children. And I hate that. I hate it so much. Or they kind of get put as the, I don't know what you would call it, but, they get given all the rubbish jobs at work because they're not brave enough to complain, or they're not brave enough to say no and things like that. And I hate it. I hate it so much. And I teach my students, like, I'm just going to teach you a lesson on how to say no.
Yeah.
How to say no to your boss. And that's it.
One thing that helped me a lot, you can tell me what you think about this, but when I was in Korea, I've never been too shy. Sometimes I'm shy, just like anyone else. But when I was learning Korean, I would try to practice all the time with native speakers. And one thing that helped me a lot was kind of making fun of myself. And it's funny how it works, and it seems kind of like you take this approach too in ways with humor. And I know that in our live lessons, you're laughing all of the time and joking. And one thing that I would do, for example, is in a cab, I'd be practicing with the cab driver, and sometimes I would just say something that didn't make any sense at all. And I could tell the cab driver just had no idea what I was talking about. And what I would say in Korean, I would say this is, "Oh, sorry, I'm just a stupid foreigner. I'm trying to learn the language." And I'd make fun of myself. And instantly the cab driver you could see their face light up, and they'd start laughing and kind of be like, "Yeah, you are a stupid foreigner, but it's okay." And they'd treat me better because I was making fun of myself. And I think that's one approach that works. What do you think about that?
100% agree. Yeah, it's what I do with Spanish. I speak Spanish to a fairly decent conversational level. I know basic Catalan. I know basic German. German I loved because the language is just so complicated that you cannot take it seriously. Mm-hmm. So with German, I just went in there like, I'm just going to have fun with this language. And I ended up learning more because your barriers come down. You just become less stressed and less kind of worried about making mistakes. And you almost learn to embrace mistakes. I almost love it when I make a mistake in Spanish because I know that I can learn from it. Mm-hmm. And many people are so scared of making mistakes because they feel, oh, if I make a mistake, people will think I'm stupid or something like that. And I want people to understand, no, if you make a mistake, see it as an opportunity to learn something new. If you had never tried and you had never made that mistake, you wouldn't have learned something. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm very happy being a stupid English girl speaking Spanish.
Yeah, and it's funny what happens once you embrace that and once you get to that point where you stop caring about the mistakes and about what other people might think. Of course, it's easier said than done a lot of the time, and I think it's probably something that we both still struggle with occasionally like everyone else, but definitely some good tips there. What would you say ultimately to someone who whether they're in school right now at a young age, I don't know how many young listeners this podcast there are, but if there are any, or this is more likely to be the case, people who are going through a difficult time because some other people in their lives are making their lives more difficult. What advice would you give?
Cut them off. Like just cut them off. And what I mean by cut them off is Just learn to filter the things that they say. If you cannot cut them out of your life, if it's someone like a supposed friend who you can't just stop seeing, maybe it's your mom or your dad or family who you see every day, or it could even be your partner. It could be your boyfriend or your wife or whoever who makes fun of you or puts you down or whatever. Just stop valuing their opinion so much. Like, the reason why you are so upset and you get so self-conscious and whatever is because you value their opinion too much, and you just need to learn to not to not basically. It's so much easier said than done, but it's what happened to me. Something clicked in my brain. I have a lot of clicks in my brain, but
clicks are good. Clicks are generally good things.
Yeah. So I just have these clicks in my brain where my brain's like, you know what, Emma, you just need to stop talking to that person because they're putting you down, or Emma, you need to stop listening to that person because the feedback and the criticism they're giving you is not helpful. Things like that. Learn to filter out the crap. That's it.
Awesome. Well, Emma, thank you so much for the conversation and the wise words. And we all know that you're a teacher at English TV Live, our pronunciation expert. But where else can people find you online?
I'm pretty much everywhere, Jacob. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, all down as Pronunciation with Emma. So you can find me on any of those platforms.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone. See you in the next episode.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the English TV Live podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the private community at English TV Live. If you would like to learn more about how you can become a member of our private community, go to www.englishttvlive.com.